Well, hello, everybody. We are so excited to kick off today's marketing panel, Marketing Techniques to Attract Customers and Investors at the 2023 StartOut Equity Summit. As we all know, marketing plays a major role for startups at every stage of the startup lifecycle. And every entrepreneur knows the importance of creating awareness and building an engaged audience base if they want to make their startups valuable to investors. But marketing can get quite complicated and downright expensive. And that's why I'm honored to introduce our panelists, Alexandra Tan and Sarah Mooney. These experts all possess strong backgrounds in marketing for startups, and they'll be sharing their insights and experiences to help you navigate common challenges and maximize your own marketing efforts. So first, let's Tanner. Alexandra is a seasoned digital marketer currently serving as the VP of Digital Commerce and UX at Central Garden and Pet. With previous experience as the VP of Marketing at L'Oreal and a current national board member at StartOut, Alexandra brings her expertise in digital strategy, marketing, and fostering diversity to contribute to the growth and innovation of organizations. Her commitment to creating seamless customer experiences and promoting inclusivity reflects her passion for making a positive impact in the industry. Next, we have Eric. And Eric is a veteran of digital, mobile, and programmatic marketing in agencies and venture-backed startup companies. At Ogilvy Consulting, Eric develops strategies for building business value through data intelligence, content development, program optimization, and marketing performance. He's also served as co-founder and the chief marketing officer of Radium One, a leading global programmatic media investment software platform, president and chief strategy officer of IPG's Initiative Media, and co-founder and president of Brand in Hand, among many other roles. And last but certainly not least, we have Sarah Mooney. And Sarah is the director of marketing at Ariglad, an HR software company that has just graduated from Y Combinator. Prior to Ariglad, she has worked with Masslight, an investment firm, with their investment team, voting on startups from a marketer's perspective. She is a full-stack digital marketer with a passion for growth hacks and analytics. And beyond that, her strategies have also been recognized by Fortune 1000 companies. And before we dive in, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Jonathan Ochart, and I'll be moderating this panel. I'm the founder and CEO of the Postcard Agency, and we deliver digital marketing and PR services to clients around the globe, from PBS to Miami Beach Pride. And through our work, we enable our clients to maximize their schedules and budgets so they can accomplish everything on their checklists and bucket lists. And that's enough about me. Let's dive into our session. So first, we're going to discuss how startups can generate traction through marketing. So panelists, let's get started with the first question. When should startups start marketing themselves?
I guess I'll dive in first. I would say as soon as possible. So the moment you own a domain, I would immediately start trying to drive traffic to that website to start getting subscribers, early stage waitlist waiters right away.
Great. Alex,
I'll
Eric?
second that. The first maybe piece of business, once you have settled on some type of public facing identity, company name, grab that domain. Maybe it's not your first option. Maybe you have some type of secondary placeholder domain that references the company, and one day when you have the budget, you're going to get the .com. But put up a website, a Squarespace, a Wix, if it's D2C, maybe a Shopify, and begin that collection of your first party data, your future customers. That is part of the test and learn. And as you're validating the idea, no better place to start than yesterday, but if not today.
Yeah, you definitely want to get that domain, and whether you get the traffic right away or just set up those domains, set yourself up in social media for a couple of reasons. One is you also want that organic search to accrue to you. So, if you've got, you've got keywords, you've got domains, you've got stuff that's out there, it's really worth investing the time, not necessarily the money, but investing the time in making sure that you're getting picked up in context and in relevant conversations certainly on the web, in search engines, but then, throughout every social channel that matters. Start building that audience right away, and start friends of friends is really important, and create a whole social graph of people who want to share your user generated content, if that's what you can afford. And that would makes sense for your time. Start getting stuff that people are going to want to share with others, and start to radiate.
Those are all great insights. And building an audience, as we all know, is super important, whether you're a startup early in the game or later in the game. So, but speaking of early stage startups, why is it so important at the very beginning to start cultivating a large and engaged audience, whether it's to look attractive to investors, awareness? Why is it so important?
Well, for one thing, we want to show the connection between marketing and pitching, right? It's great to walk into pitch situations, whether it's with angels, whether it's with larger money venture firms, and no matter what stage, it's great to walk in with an audience, with people that have given you feedback on your product and product market fit. And there's so many frankly cost-free things that you can do, and in order to be able to understand what your audiences want, where their pain points are, what you're solving. There's so much good information, and really part of the value of that, aside from building up a following and building up interest, is bringing that into a pitch meeting is really valuable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll add that, at the beginning of your journey, depending on what your product is, your product or service, I feel like there is this understanding that, especially the earliest companies, there's this like reciprocity that people have, that they want to help. Whereas the more mature you get, maybe after your raise and you're trying to seed a product or work with an influencer or UGC, it might be a pay to play situation. Whereas very early on, people are kind of happy to receive the product, give you feedback on it. And sometimes you get lucky and they use their, relative influence to post about it. So I work with a men's skincare brand. Definitely could not afford the type of, VC backed paid media strategies that some of their competitors did. And they just, went heads down and identified all of the best male celebrity groomers in the industry, took the lists every weekend, sending out packages, and 1 out of 10 used the product, which is a pretty good yield, and then gave them a huge shout out with A, B, and C list celebrities. That's pretty incredible. So you got to shoot your shot early on.
I guess I also want to echo on both what Alex and Eric have said, but also add that when you are looking to raise, like when you are kind of like pre-product and you need that money in order to like build that MVP, that beta, etc., then traction is going to be like one of those key things to bring to an investor to really make them think, okay, wow, this person has the ability to sell, to build an audience when they don't even have a product available. And that's really hard to do. So if they have the ability to build that wait list, it's very, very attractive to investors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, last point on this, though, compliment to what both Alex and Sarah were saying, is barter, right? That reciprocity that Alex was talking about. There's a lot of partners. There's a lot of, friendly other companies and people in your situation who are willing to barter either their services or their products for yours. And, it's very complimentary. And I think you'll find, especially, in goods, in technology, in every vertical you can think of, there are opportunities to be able to barter capabilities that are strengths and weaknesses of one another.
Very good. Those are super helpful techniques and insights to build your. So obviously we know startups need to raise money, right, to make their ideas happen, to bring products to life. So can you share some insights of how startups can leverage the power of marketing specifically to raise money?
I guess it kind of ties back into the previous questions that if you have that traction, it does make you way more attractive to investors. And I guess if you have been able to do like some surveys, or at least have had, some friends and family to be like, oh, wow, like this is a cool product, and just like create those videos, it kind of becomes like a case study to showcase to investors, to showcase that, hey, people actually really like what I'm offering. They would love it if I had the money to actually build it. So they're kind of like these pre-qualified case studies that you can have put together.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So we're going to move on to the next segment of the session, and it's all about protecting your ideas. So again, as a startup, you probably have a really great idea. Maybe no one's ever thought of it before, or maybe it's, an adjustment of something that already exists. So panelists, how secretive do startups need to be when marketing themselves and their businesses? Let's say we don't want their ideas stolen. They're concerned about that. What routes and avenues can they take to protect themselves?
Yeah, I think you can be without getting into NDAs and without getting into serious competitive situations where you feel like your stuff's going to start to seep out all over the industry, and everybody's after your stuff and your info and your methodologies and stuff. Being careful about focusing on the benefits and your USPs and what's unique about your approach. If you don't want to give away anything that can be replicated easily, or anything that could be replicated if somebody just had access to it. It's just a matter of being aware. But shutting down entirely and just putting a wall around your product and around your company, it doesn't serve the purpose. And there isn't really that much that people can steal from you to hurt you. Ultimately, there are certainly for a number of us, there's things to protect. But just be judicious about what you choose. But walling yourself off is unlikely to really work.
Yeah, I think that also with the messaging that you put out there, it can be a little bit more vague to protect yourself. So you can kind of emphasize that like this is a new way of doing blank, but you don't. If you are kind of like you want to be hush hush about your secret, and you are so stressed out about someone stealing the idea, then you can kind of just be a little bit more vague and just hide kind of like the key differentiators that you are offering until you're ready.
Yeah, I kind of had an experience that I could reflect on hindsight. It was not a pure startup. It was a startup inside of a larger corporation, but it had a component where the build of our product was going to take a very long time, and internally we were extremely secretive, and we were secretive when it came to choosing partners. And if the product was so differentiated and it took so long to go to market that we thought it was truly a moat, that should have been enough. Because I think when I look back on it, we missed on opportunities to barter, to recruit allies, to be in the market, even kind of teasing the product and building the base sooner. And sometimes you're in a space where you have a first mover advantage, and of course the product's not 100% ready, but you might go back to that idea that we had at the beginning of when to market yourself, and get as close as possible to explaining the product or the service and teasing a little bit.
Mhm.
But in our prep session for this, Sarah had a good point on the investment side. It's how many times investment firm receives a NDA for a pitch that's essentially been done a million times before. It's truly not differentiated, and it kind of makes you look less mature, probably in the eyes of these investors.
Yes, a lot of copycats out there trying to have you sign an NDA. And I mean, I've heard it many times where investors will actually sign an NDA, which is extremely, extremely uncommon for early stage startups. And they would kind of be questioning why did they sign that NDA, because there are probably 5+ companies offering the exact same thing without any differentiating factors.
Mm-hmm. So I know during our prep session as well, we talked about doing marketing for yourself as a founder. So getting the word out there, building a name for yourself. Can you all share some insights around that as well? Like maybe some strategies from a PR angle. How can a founder start getting bylines in articles or getting interviewed on TV or for magazines or blogs? Just ways to start getting some name recognition out there. And that way it's not just all about spilling all the secrets regarding their startup, but they're still generating some traction there. Can you all speak around that a little bit? Maybe some techniques for founders to just build a name for themselves?
I mean, I genuinely love it. I feel that every founder should at least attempt to become a bit of like a thought leader in the space that they're entering. That way, not only do they kind of like build that initial momentum before they actually launch themselves, like launch their product, company, etc., like almost turning themselves into like a little micro influencer, thought leader around that topic. I mean, if they do that, oftentimes people actually approach them and ask to feature them in all sorts of media out there. But it's also a matter of, if you kind of turn yourself into a thought leader and then you actually reach out to be a part of media that's out there, typically you're more prone to be accepted opposed to denied, because you have, you know, so many connections on LinkedIn, so much engagement on whatever platform that you have out there. Like, people like your opinions and whatnot. So starting that initial traction just about yourself opposed to what you're looking to build really helps with your credibility as a founder. Even when it comes to investing, your name will look great on your pitch deck.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just personality wise, you know, there's some founders that are probably on a scale of more introversion, and that's probably tough to put yourself out there as the face of your company. But I think it is a bit of a reality in any type of B2B or B2C facing company, is that you will have to get out of that comfort zone. But typically, if you have a deep knowledge and a deep passion and an expertise, I think that is something that you could lean on with confidence, that people do want to hear from you. They want to read this type of either thought leadership or new idea. And I think sometimes, you know, maybe this is a personal thing, but when you're so deep and you're so close to what you're doing, you sometimes think like, oh, everybody knows this. And I think it's good to step back and say, well, maybe not everybody knows this. Maybe I have something to teach, and that there's some, you know, nugget that somebody will take away scrolling on LinkedIn and see your, you know, article that you've kind of published for yourself, and saying yes to different opportunities like speaking engagements. If you get invited, you know, to speak on a particular topic, I think that's a good way to get momentum, meet people, just like the Equity Summit. You know, there's a lot of conversation, a lot of connection happening throughout the day and in these sessions. It really is a good place to like build momentum.
Yeah, so I have a couple of additional things. So I used to have a company, worked with partners. We had a company that had, you know, huge data sets. We had access to a lot of data about consumer behavior and buying patterns and all kinds of stuff. So many of our companies have access to either generate that kind of data or have access to it. I used to take stuff like that and turn it into trends for where people, how many people are on mobile, how many people are going to buy online, what the trends are. I could just look in that. That's not what the company did, but we would get attention. So we'd create an infographic, some trade journalists. They'd find that really interesting. They could write something about it. Suddenly they were authoring something about back to school, and then they could, you know, interview us and use quotes from us about the data, the underlying data supporting what these trends are. And it was a way to create a thought leadership on something that wasn't dead on to what we were trying to sell, but it was giving us exposure. And frankly, the people we were trying to sell to would see our names or the company name in an article and just go, wow, these guys are legit. These guys are like, people have heard of them. Journalists reach out to these people. So that's one thing. And then the one other thing I would say is, for anybody who doesn't have a lot of PR or media experience so far in their career, just note that like journalists and all the way up to like Bloomberg TV, like they are not asking you to come on to pitch your company. They're asking you to come on to be an authority on a point of view, bring something interesting to a topic. So the expectation that like, hey, you should put us on, or hey, you should have us on a panel, or hey, you should write about us. Journalists, and I've had this conversation with them so many times, so many people pitch them and go, hey, we're a really cool company with a really cool product. You should write about us. And journalists are just like, that's not what we do. I'm not a hype machine for what you're doing. But if you have a really interesting perspective on something, I'd love to get your thoughts. And, name of your company is going to end up in there.
Really great points. Yeah, especially from a PR perspective, working with reporters, and they get hundreds of pitch emails a day. So it's really important to make sure you're providing some sense of value and you're making, because they want a story that stands on its own. One thing we've seen in the past, and what's really great about everyone here at the summit, is the power of diversity, especially as it relates to startups. So sometimes leading with that angle, if you have a really great story to share of how you're solving a certain problem and you tie in your diversity angle, that we've seen lots of success in that realm as well. Really great tips. So for the next segment of our session, we're going to focus on balancing the art of marketing and pitching. So we kind of covered this a little bit, but I want to dive in a little bit deeper. So what do investors really care about when we're looking at marketing metrics? What are some things that that stand out to them that can help, push their decisions in your favor?
I think that one of the bigger things, like if you are pre-product and you're going to investors to raise money in order to build a product, then it's definitely going to be about like your the traction that you do have. So if you do have a wait list, it's also going to be, do you have LOIs, especially if you are a B2B business? LOIs, that's a big topic, and it's something that a lot of startups don't feel like they necessarily have to go after until they do have a product. But if you are able to get LOIs before you actually have a product launch, it just makes you look so much more desirable as a startup. Being like, the fact that you are able to sell something before it's even launched is just impressive on its own. And then if you are kind of like post-product, I think that something that's really attractive is definitely just like your number of users. And then going further than that is just like, okay, you were able to get like, let's say 500 downloads, but of those 500, how many people are actually like using your app? And how often do they use it? And how long are they on it? I think those are very attractive metrics.
And Sarah, we actually got a question in the chat, LOI question mark. Can you explain what an LOI is?
That's a letter of intent. It basically means that, let's say if you're pre-product, then and you are able to sell to XYZ business, they kind of like guarantee that they will buy your product once it is available. So an LOI will typically have a dollar amount, and typically with pre-products, you will kind of give like a discount on your LOI because they're buying into it before it's actually launched. So it's kind of like a pilot rate.
I'll add, what other components maybe of a pre-revenue pitch deck. I think you're going to have some type of market analysis, the problem that you're solving, the size of the prize. The market analysis should be, I think, really tied to the problem that you are solving, because sometimes people put this is the total addressable market of what we're going to solve, and it's this giant multi-billion-dollar market, and you're really going to take a slice of it, and maybe that just shows a little bit more maturity could be put into thinking about what is really the size of the prize that we're going after. And, you know, even if you don't have the product finished, the closer you can get to what that looks like and testing it in a market, and to include that in the deck to show that it truly does, from the customer point of view, solve that problem, the better. You know, if you don't have the full product launched, but you have some type of dummy site, you know, it's dummy product, but people through survey data say, yes, I would have a propensity to purchase this, or yes, it would solve this problem. I think that's helpful. The closer you get to an LOI or a consumer taking out their credit card to actually pay for the product, that's the strongest type of evidence. But whatever you could do before that stage, I think is helpful, just as close as you could get to that point of conversion.
Yeah, you hit a couple of my buttons on, because, like, you know, post revenue, look, we've all got enough, we've got enough to prove post revenue that we can manage costs, that we can make a margin, that, you know, that we have realistic projections of how our costs come down, and how you know, the markets that we're going to tackle. You know, there's so much that we have to do post revenue in that kind of a room. But pre revenue, you know, I swear I wrote an investor deck this morning, and, you know, with a client actually. And, you know, one of the things is, like, we will lose credibility in the room right away if your total addressable market is 7 billion people and $7 trillion. Like, your addressable market is not entertainment. Like, entertainment's not an addressable market. You really got to help yourself be realistic. Yes, we all want to show an addressable market that's really, really big and juicy. And you don't want a teeny little thing where it's like, really, it's only $200 million? Like, how much of that you think you're going to get? But you can't add 4 different industries, 3 of which are irrelevant, to your addressable market, and then claim that, you know, hey, if I just get 0.01% of that $7 trillion market, man, you know, this thing's a rocket ship. So we all, you know, maybe that's not a realistic thing that people do, but I've seen a lot of people do it. And, you know, it's find that balance between believable, supportable, and, you know, and something that you're proud to base your company on.
Yeah, these kind of like crazy numbers that founders will put on their pitch deck, they 100% scare away investors. Just showing not full transparency or not full research into like your addressable market just leaves a sour taste in the investor's mouth, essentially.
What's some advice you have regarding the whole research process for these pitch decks? And again, as someone who isn't in the startup world, just out of curiosity, like, is there a process? Are there resources? Like, where can these founders go to develop this research for their pitch decks? Do they hire a third party? What does that look like?
Oftentimes there's like literally a lot of like resources out there, just not resources, like researches that are kind of like published about where certain industries are going in the next couple of years, where they are now, where they have been like 5 years ago. So kind of like being able to show that growth of how the industry has evolved over the past couple of years is also attractive. But honestly, just like a deep dive into like your search engine will show you so much information. As long as it's a credible source, of course. We don't want some Wikipedia stuff.
True.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think at an early stage, I think investors understand, you know, as long as the data source is good, you could look at Crunchbase, you could look at other kind of market corollaries. But if the question is on the deck itself, I know that there are so many templates out there of like, you know, XYZ pitch deck for consumer companies, for B2B. I think you can start with a template. I think you should get feedback on it as you go from others that have, you know, raised as well. Sometimes there's so much emphasis on the design of the deck and the time that's being put into that versus the content of the ideas and the research behind it to prove out, if you're going to give an addressable market, statistic, where is that coming from, right? Is it credible? Is it adding up? So I think that's where the time should be spent. And we had another chat, I think, in our prep session about how much time is spent on the financial projections pre-revenue, and people giving 3, 5, 10-year very detailed P&L projections. We think that's a bit of a red or beige flag. Like, often it is so wildly off, and it's just going to create more of a spotlight on for teams that have seen this a million times go right and go wrong and know that those numbers are not realistic. I've seen founders just continually redoing these projections for nothing. And I think the impact is actually negative.
Yeah, and I would say absolutely. I totally relate to that. I would really focus on the problem and the solution. You got to focus on the whole deck. But once you've got your outline, and there's a million decks online, and there's a lot of resources to figure out what's the flow. By the way, there's some people, I like to try to stick to this, but I like to try to stick to the 10, 20, 30, 10 slides, 20 minutes, 30-point type. And, obviously that's plus minus, right, on each of those. But, 10 slides, you're not going to have the time you can't go through. Yeah, there's people who walk in with 80 slides, right? You got to, like, 10 slides, discipline yourself. One of those is a call us. One of them's a title slide. So you basically got like 8 slides to tell your story in a realistic, cogent way. And in those 8 slides, I would put a lot of time into the problem and into the solution. Honestly, because you could have great ideas and a great plan and the most amazing team and a lot of really good things. But if they don't relate to the problem, that it's really a problem. There's a lot of people walk in and it's like, is that big a problem? Really? Do people have that much trouble finding that product or finding that thing, or that many people have that problem? That's why you really got to nail it down and make it like a visceral thing. Like, yes, I understand how it does. They don't have to have the same problem themselves in the room who you're pitching, but they have to understand that there are people who have that problem. And this sounds like a really good solution to it. Now let's see how you're going to do it.
Excellent. I love the 10, 20, 30 formula. And back to your point, Eric, about...
I didn't make that up, by the way. That's completely stolen.
Right?
Somebody smart.
That kind of stems back to the whole PR approach as well. What is the problem and how does this solve it? What about this? How does this create value? So it all ties back together, from PR to pitching to marketing. So we have 10 minutes left in the session, and I think we want to open it up for questions from the guests here who are attending. So do we have any questions that y'all like to share? I think you can share them just in the session chat. We have some amazing panelists here with tons of experience in the startup world, so you definitely want to take advantage of them being here. Here we have a question from Hillary. Any advice for founders when they pitch a super early idea with a strong problem solution emphasis, but investors want to see traction?
I think like it's sometimes like it could be not the most fun thing to say, but getting traction would be a really big thing to work on having. Whether it's just like one LOI or whether it's just like getting a small following on like social media, not small, but like pretty decent. These are all different forms of traction, whether it's LOI, social media following, whether it's your own personal brand that is pretty attractive. Like there are different forms of traction. So I think it's whether it's about going after some of them.
Can we talk about social media for a minute in terms of followings? What what is a good follower count, or should we care about more engagement? What are investors looking at? Engagement rates, follower counts, types of content, all of it? What stands out to them?
I think in my experience, they're not necessarily like diving too much into like the engagement versus following. It's just, it could also be just how credible it looks. So definitely they'll look at the type of content that you're putting out there. People even liking it to begin with. They're not going to use these like tools to check like, oh, are your followers real? What's your ratio of engagement and whatnot? But they're definitely just going to like do their due diligence as they should and check and see, okay, are they even promoting themselves? Are they even putting the manual effort that it takes to kind of like grow their brand awareness?
Mm-hmm. Similar to social media, and everyone attending, please feel free to share questions. Oh, here they are. Gosh, I forgot to scroll. Okay. Any advice on marketing to marginalized communities? It's a good question. Any advice on marketing to marginalized communities? I would say one thing is to make sure you have a diverse team. Make sure that whoever you're hiring and working with and collaborating represents, the full breadth of the communities. So especially, let's say you're creating a solution targeting the LGBTQ community, it behooves you to include people who are part of that community, to have a voice and a seat at the table to drive direction. That way it comes across as authentic and meaningful and achieves what you're trying to achieve. But I'll let the panelists add.
I would definitely second that. Even at an early stage, especially if the company is focused on solutions for a particular community, you generally want you want to have a team that's representative of that community speaking for them. I think, there's a lot of scrutiny these days, particularly of maybe non-authentic attempts at representing a community from people that are outside of the community, and just missing the mark on so many of those communication angles. Like, you see it all the time on Twitter. Like, was somebody here from the LGBTQ community, vetting this? Did one person get, on this marketing campaign or this messaging? Because it seems, disingenuous. So yeah, I think that's definitely something to keep in mind with angle of, marginalized communities.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes to organic or paid media behind the market, because we're talking about marketing, there's so much good targeting data out there to be able to find people who are in the market. People, there's so many characteristics that we can use to target audiences. There's a lot of opportunity.
Mm-hmm. So we have some more questions on social media from Sandra and Lalo. What is a good social media platform strategy, and how does that break down by each platform? So we know the social media landscape is growing, things are changing. We could just look at TikTok, for example, and see what's going on there. But can you all provide some insights around strong social strategies and maybe divide that by platforms?
I think it's really important to strongly consider like who your audience is first. Your audience might not be living on every single social media platform, so you won't have to like, put your effort into every single one of them. Who is your audience? Are they dog walkers? What hashtags do dog walkers want to follow? How often are you posting? Like, I think it's all of those, like, answers to all of those questions are solely based off like who is the audience that you're targeting.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I mean, there are certain platforms that are more suited to certain products, right? So if you have something that has a very visceral payoff, right? A product that has a good before and after, TikTok is wonderful, right? Because it's very visual. and it gives you enough time to explain it. You could say it, use influencers, UGC, you could explain it yourself. You could have that founder angle. Great, but also very high effort, right? It's much harder to produce a good video than it is to send a 140 character tweet. But the impact is very different. The algorithm is different. And maybe Twitter is a place for, I won't even get into Twitter these days, but let's go into something. Let's say you have something that's a huge hobbyist product that you need to go deep, and it's a very small and niche community. Reddit is probably a good forum for you to be active on, and Reddit is not necessarily a forum like TikTok or Instagram or other meta properties that are, very easy to crack into from a brand perspective. You have to go as your founder expert perspective and persona and be part of those subreddits. But I think it gives you a lot of, market research, speaking to people in the community, but also I think it is very authoritative these days. People are searching, XYZ product Reddit to get through a lot of what has become the fault of Google search, just garbage paid affiliate placements, and you don't really get a good unvarnished feeling from the expert community of like what's the best product or service to solve this. So yeah, it really depends what the product or service is, but I just wouldn't peanut butter spread your time over every platform and push out the same message. It's choose 2 to 3 and do them well.
Also,
I
I
would
would
also-
make sure that you're using each platform for what it's good at, right? Obviously, TikTok and Instagram, although they're a little bit different in where the audience age and the purpose for which people use it and why they're there, and the obvious differences. Twitter, totally different audience, totally different purpose. That's not a place for video. It's not a place for super visual things on Twitter. And then the other obvious one is like LinkedIn. LinkedIn's great if you are trying to reach those audiences with that kind of content. And yeah, you can do video. Yeah, you can do text stuff. Yeah, you can do GIFs. You can do interesting things, but that's LinkedIn. That's got to be like the fit, just like Alex is saying. That's got to fit your product and the kind of audience you're trying to reach. But it's great if that's what you're trying to TikTok for the same thing as you're trying to use LinkedIn for. Sorry, Sarah, you were trying to.
Oh, I was just gonna give Alex a big warm virtual hug, because that was very true. Just I feel like a lot of people don't even consider Reddit. It has a lot of potential.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, we have 30 seconds left. We want to thank you all for joining us for this session. You can find Sarah, Alex, and Eric here in Excel events. You can reach out to them, check out their profiles to get more information. And we just want to thank you for being here. Hopefully you got some great takeaways, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great questions, everybody. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
That was awesome. Good job, everyone.